Roberts in chairing this evening, and I've got Councillor Rob Isaac as Vice Chair. Do we have any apologies?
I haven't received any, Chair, but
Okay.
No, I haven't had any.
I've received them, I guess, informally, so from Bev Fernandez and Caro Elaine Ellis. So if we could just note those, and Ed Berman is joining us, so we'll hopefully see him. And there he is, just as I was saying his name. So Ed is also here. We'll note those other apologies in the minutes.
okay.
So agenda item number 2 is declarations of interest. Do we, from any of the 4 of us present, have any declarations of interest to note that are different?
Oh, thank you. Yes, with the actually no, because it's the confidential one actually. So I don't know whether I should.
Do we do that during?
Still declaring your interest if you've got an interest in it.
Okay, I'm not sure if it is an interest, but in terms of choosing solicitors, my family has used one of the companies before in terms of a probate for. I don't know if that I would have to. That would better my interest.
Only used it, not own it.
Yeah.
Yeah. I don't think that's an interest because you're not. There's no financial gain, is there?
No.
Made a note of that. So that's all the declarations of interest. We're on to the minutes of the previous meeting that took place on the 20th of May. I wasn't at this meeting, but I will, if everyone is happy with anyone got any comments on the minutes at all? Rob, as chair of that meeting, you're comfortable with the minutes?
Yes, Chair.
Would you be happy to propose that they are signed?
I would, if you'd like for me to propose it.
And I just need a seconder. Okay, so 2 is seconding. So all those in favour of me signing the minutes? Perfect. So we'll then move on to the forward plan that we've got in our agenda today. A second. So starting to fill up with items as we lead into budget setting, I imagine. So that is starting to happen as we move into October being the next meeting. Does anyone have any questions or comments or anything that they want to add to the forward plan? It feels like it's going very quickly that we'll be going to be talking about budget soon. But I guess we've got summer holidays first. So, and do we just note the forward plan?
Yeah.
Perfect. Okay. We'll then move on to agenda item number 5. It's the first substantial item on our agenda, which is looking at the EPC ratings for Trafalgar House. And Angela, am I okay to pass over to you to introduce?
Thank you. Good evening, members. Report before you today identifies in particular the energy performance certificates and the legislation that now that we are a landlord of a non-domestic privately rented property, Trafalgar House, we are bound by. Currently, from April 23, all non-domestic privately rented properties have to have an energy performance certificate of this. Now, we are in the fortunate position of actually having all of our units either above 2 or in D, and our own unit 3 and 4 it will no doubt have a higher rating following our refurbishment. The reason for bringing it to you tonight, members, is as with everything, there is some proposals to amend the legislation so that the EPC ratings should be higher. Now, the current proposals, and it is only proposals, it's not in legislation at the moment, but the proposals are that by 28, all non-domestic rented buildings must have improved building EPC rating of C or above, and by 2030, an EPC rating of B or above. Now, whilst, I would stress again that it's only proposed legislation, we are taking the opportunity to have some on the basis the members agree, to use some funding from the Trafalgar House budget to undertake an assessment, an EPC assessment, to understand what we would need to do to actually ensure that the building meets the EPC rating of B or above by 2030. So the request before you tonight really is to seek a funding amount of 7,000. This will just give us an ability to go out to the market and get an assessment. I would caveat by saying that any work that we do now may well need to we may need to reconsider some of that if the legislation changes or the legislation doesn't come in. But overall, it's an opportunity whilst we've got this period of time before any proposed changes coming in, to actually give us a chance to understand what we will need to do to Trafalgar House to improve the ratings overall. So happy to take any questions.
Thank you for that. And I've just got a question and then I'll bring in Rob. So I guess what we're needing to do is my understanding that we're going to look to have a look and see what we need to do in effect to get them up to certain EPC ratings. And then we will do papers as and when needed to bring those to different committees depending on the spend that's needed, and see, like, I guess, a cost benefit analysis for each of the things that we need to do when it comes to.
Yeah, and obviously we will need to make a determination of how much the tenants actually pay as well, because obviously they've all got leases, admittedly with varying clauses within them because of the time when those leases were written. But there will be a need to have discussions with our tenants as well as to how much, you know, how much cost we pass on to them as well. So those will all be part of the considerations. This very much is the development of a foundation to understand the issues. Obviously, members will remember we've come back in the past with papers. We had the survey done in February, and we've got some issues with the roof, which we're starting to tackle. So all of that feeds into it as well. But yes, there'll be further papers back to your good selves before we did anything further.
So I'm really comfortable from my point of view doing this. I think it's just about how we look at that cost benefit, because I know that there's sometimes a challenge around EPC ratings because not all of the things that you do when you do it on houses, as an example, actually
Make a difference.
But yet you do a lot of funding into them. But I do think that if this is the way the government's going and we can see that there's maybe even cost benefits for us by doing it, then it seems to make sense to at least start the journey. Well,
Yes, thank you, Chair. I think Andrew did a very good paper. Well done on putting those together. It's very, very clear. I'm just looking at the point 2.5, and the last bit you probably covered it anyway, which was very clear. But the last couple of lines, the council will at least be in a good position to understand potential costs and the implications for our tenants. And you did say that would be covered in the contract that is with them.
I think at the moment, Councillor, as it really is, it's just to get an understanding. I think also as well, it's a bit of a learning opportunity for us. What we will need to do, you know, because obviously, you know, is it about? I'm sorry, probably being a bit naive here myself, but is it about putting solar panels onto the roof? You know, is it about asking X unit to change this, or is it about ensuring that all our lighting is LED or compliant or whatever? We really are in a bit of a sort of a, you know, at the moment. So that's really why we're starting, as Councillor Frederica Smith-Roberts said, it's a bit of a journey at the moment as to understand where we are and what we're doing.
Would it be a good idea to inform the tenants that we're going through this process and there could be some potential costs and implications for them, because telling them people up front, it's might be more easier down the road.
No. So yeah, certainly we can. As members will know, we're working with Alder King as our managing agents for the property, and they actually went out to the property yesterday. So we've got a bit of catching up to do, but they are aware of this paper today. So we will go back to them and actually just make sure that any communications we send out, or they send out, or we send out, that we're aware that we'll be doing this assessment.
I saw within the report that you made a bit of an estimation that in terms of perhaps repairing the roof, you wouldn't need to spend a full 80,000 on it. Do you have any other estimates?
Not at the present moment in time in respect to the roof specifically. We are still seeking quotes, but now that we are owners, then we will be seeking to do an internal inspection. At the moment, we've done a lot of external inspections, but you need to do the internal as well to understand what's happening internally. So we are in the process of doing that. But once we know a fuller picture, and obviously we'll do a further report back to your good selves.
Or you have a question?
Thank you very much, Chair. Yeah, it seems like a very sensible approach to me. I guess you may not have seen a similar survey, but I was just wondering, the survey we get back will be specific around our building, because I did a quick Google today about the different bands and it said, like you said, put solar panels on, but I presume what we're getting from the survey is in this area of the building, you need to do exactly that.
That's what we believe, yes. You know, we've had Richard Seeley from our projects team has contacted a number of suppliers, and you know, there is like anything in the market, slightly different approach to some of these things. I think we need to just establish from 3 that we've approached today what would give us the best sort of overall understanding of what our building is and what we'll need to do. So so yeah, we will get that sorted out for you.
If there's no further questions, we'll move to the recommendations, which are on page 13, section 9. I'm happy to propose these. Seconder? Rob seconding. All those in favour? Perfect. We'll move on to the next item on the agenda, which is the additional fees and charges for 25-26. And back to you, Angela.
Thank you. As members will know, we agreed our fees and charges 25-26 in probably March time. Since that time, we've had a couple of new fees and charges pop up. The first one is hot air balloon launches. We found out that our Park Greenway Road was being used for hot air balloons launches, and we understand Hamilton Court is also going to be used for hot air balloon launches. Now, we have been in contact with the pilot of the hot air balloons, and he's been using them, by the sounds of it, for a number of years under a previous arrangement with Somerset West and Taunton. Obviously, we own the park, so therefore we need to take ownership of this, and obviously from that develop a fee structure for him. We've had a look round to see what others do. Quite difficult to find. That's one with many things. And sort of like looking at what Guildford do, they do a sort of set fee for the year based on a number of launches. So that is a recommendation before you tonight in respect to hot air balloons, is that £800 a year for a maximum of 25 launches. And also obviously on the basis that he may want to do more than that, then we would charge £50 per launch. The other one is the use of the slipway in French Weir Park, which is the slipway nearest to, I think, is it Clarence Road. Obviously, we have had somebody who has previously been using the river, who had been using it on the back of the coach agreement, no longer in discussions with coach, has asked to use the slipway for the work that he does, and he does a lot of work with men's mental health, and I assume it's paddle boarding or kayaking or something like that. And there is an expectation then that we would charge a fee for that. We're recommending £225 a year for that. Now, I know that there will be some concerns around potentially parking and the issues around that. Looking at the site, and we've had our health and safety lead go out as well, the intention would be to allow him to park not on the walkway but to the side, because he uses his van obviously for storage of his equipment, but also for customers' belongings as well, because he can lock that, because obviously there's no lockers or anything in any sort of reasonable distance. So those are the 2 fees before you tonight. I'm happy to take any questions.
I'll go to Rob first, and then I've got a couple of questions, and then Ed.
Thank you, Chair. Thank you, Angela. Again, very good. I've got several questions on this. It concerns me a tad, but first one, what I've written there, what does the applicant get for the fee?
Which one?
Why do we charge a fee?
What?
No, this is just the balloon one. I haven't got
The balloon one. Okay, the balloon one. Basically, we give it. It's about. It's almost, I suppose, like an agreement that he can use our land for to launch a balloon. Really.
Good. So if we're charging the fee, do we have any legal or financial liability And then would we need insurance if it all goes?
Yeah, he would need to produce to us a risk assessment himself. We will obviously do a risk assessment for ourselves for the park, because obviously we wouldn't. I'd like to think we would know when the launches will be, and one of the things I'm very keen on, when, especially in something like this, is that we use our comms team to, you know, see the positives of it. But he would need to do a risk assessment. He'd need to have public liability insurance, which actually includes the launching and piloting of a hot air balloon. I think is what is needed. We obviously have our own public liability insurance, and we would also do our own risk assessment, because at the end of the day, when he does a balloon launch, and if you think about it, he's used Greenway Rec, so it's not exactly a large area, a large park. We'd need to make sure that anybody who is using the park beyond watching the launch was actually safe as well. So so those would be a number of things that we would need to do, but he has the responsibility to ensure that he's got enough insurance and risk assessment.
Yeah, great. Now, on that, you mentioned several documents that they have to produce, and it does say in the paper that we would check these documents to who is qualified, or do we have the correct persons to be able to, because if we don't know what we don't know, if we do, we have somebody that would be able to check that they're correct.
I do believe the deputy town clerk is sat next to me. I'm sure that Marcus will help. If we are really struggling, then we all have to get an opinion and get a legal opinion, or certainly for our insurance company, if we're unsure about the public liability insurance that he's got. There are health and safety. Yeah, we can use
Safety, fit to fly and all those, because there's been some fatality.
There are a number of people that we can dip into and ask to make sure that they are satisfied that we've got the correct paperwork, and that, you know, that our parks will be safe.
Great. One more question, if I may. If we're charging these fees, what pot of money, what does that go into? Towards general fund, or where would those fees go to?
Just goes into the income for the year. Yes, that would go into income for the park that it's been.
Oh, I get you. Yeah, okay, that's lovely. Thanks. That's all questions from me, Chair. Thank you.
I've got a few questions, and they're normally careful questions, so I apologise in advance. I'm wondering whether our website will be built, I guess, to be able to we can book our parks via the website, so we can, and we'll insert it that you could book it for hot air balloons as part of that, or we will treat
I
this
think we
separately.
probably need to come to an agreement with Mr. Dunnington, who is the pilot, to actually ensure that we do an annual check, but more importantly that we block the park out for what he proposes to be his launch dates. Obviously, we have to caveat that by saying, well, okay, fair enough, that might change because it's too windy, or it's wet, or whatever other conditions you can't fly in. But generally, yeah, the intention would be to be slightly different, to treat this slightly differently from normally renting our parks, because, you know, there might be a situation where somebody's rented our park and, you know, he wants to do hot air balloon. Well, I'm awfully sorry, somebody's already rented our park, so you can't do that tonight. So,
And that was my kind of check, because there's Sunday footballs and all those things that happen. We just need to make sure that we kind of have that creation. I think there's also something around, if I was talking about Hamilton Park in particular, the fact that we are doing the additional security measures on the site, and how we just link that in so that we don't.
Yeah, my understanding is that from looking at a couple of brief emails he sent back to us when we queried it, I imagine he's got some form of entry key when in from the Somerset West and Taunton days. So whether or not he's still able to use that or not, I don't know. But obviously, post the report that came to you around the improvements to security and things like that, then we would come to an agreement with him around access and ensure that he had the access. But we would need to know that he's what he has got and when he's going to use it, again, similar to users of the park.
And then if I was coming into the slipway fees, I'm wondering again whether we need to do a half year fee.
Yeah.
Because to be fair, and again, I'm not really a river user. I go out with my kids when beavers go out as an example, but I don't know whether you would paddle board all year round. So I'm wondering if it would be fair to either do quarterly or half yearly, so that then actually they're not needing to fund the 225 all in one go. Because I guess the season is only weather Depending.
I would imagine so. I will. Certainly, I think it's probably it's a reasonable request, and I think it's something that we can build into it. Yes, by all means.
That's my questions. Was it Ed? You had a question.
Yes. Have we contacted the two people using these two activities, what they paid before to Somerset West, or have we been able to contact anyone from Somerset Council about it?
If I get reverse order, the slipway fees is a new approach because the gentleman was currently providing his facilities to the coach building on site. So in actual fact, that is a brand new one. In respect of the hot air balloons, no, we haven't done that at the moment because I think we wanted to try and establish our own position, and then we can see what was previously unpaid. So I would imagine he hasn't been paying anything since April 23 because obviously Somerset Council would have taken it over. So we'll have to see when we'll have a discussion with him in due course, pending obviously the outcome of this meeting.
Just picking up on the half-year license that Fed mentioned. Not sure you launch balloons all year round, but that's okay. I guess what I'm trying to say is, as we don't know, I wouldn't want us to impose a fee that would stop the balloons taking off. Do you see what I mean?
Yeah.
Because it goes over the town, so I just wanted to make sure we pitch that and make sure that that's at the right level, really. It's fair.
Well, okay.
So I think, Chair, just one more question as we keep going through. How would we monitor the ascents of balloons or the launches of the boats and things? Are we just taking it?
We have to do it through our booking system because at the end of the day, one of the conditions that you'll have to do is ensure that we've got a launch is on our booking system so that we know, because then we'll need to make sure look at it from a different angle. If we've got a launch on Friday night, we can use our socials, we can be really positive, great news, there's a balloon launch at Hamilton, go and see the spectacle type thing or whatever. But we would monitor it through our booking system. So that would be the approach.
Any more questions? So do I need to update the recommendations of the fee to say everyone's happy that the sum of 150, is it?
Yeah,
150 for a 6 month basis. We'll add that in. So I need to propose that. Is it someone happy to second that change to recommendations? Okay, cool. And we vote on that first. So everyone in favour of changing the recommendations on B? All in favour. So we then go to the main recommendations, which are there at 9.1 on page 17 with that change that we've just voted on, and all those in favour, please show. Perfect. Thank you. Thanks for a good and detailed report. We're going to move on to financial resilience monitoring for Q1, April to June, which I'm just bringing up here. It's again Angela.
Thank you, members. A fundamental part of my job, obviously, part of financial resilience, is to look at different ways to increase our income. And one of the things that I'm really keen to do is to ensure that members have a really good overview of all the things that we're doing. Now, you will see bits and pieces because you'll see a report coming about a potential Section 106 bid, or you'll see the use of SIL funding, as we've seen. What this aims to do is to try and give you a broad brush overview of how much additional income we've seen come into the council in a particular quarter, what we're doing in respect of grants, what we're doing in respect of our sections 106 and our SIL funding, and any other general updates around income generation. So in respect of grants, as you can see there, we'll be looking at ones we've applied for, ones we've received, and ones that we're considering. And that just gives you some broad understanding of the sort of areas that we're focusing on. Obviously, as you can see, the first two grants, solar panels and Taunton together, we were unsuccessful. Solar panels was over subscription and Taunton together for the awards for all. we didn't quite hit the mark for what was expected from that award. But we did get the SOC funding, and when we're now looking at working with the lottery on their Reaching Communities Fund for an application for the play parks and things like that. And there's the next part is obviously section 106, and obviously just the breaking news is that we were very successful in getting the £19,578 in AP. We were found out late last week, so we've got that for Prizewood, and as you can see there, we've got 2 other section 106 funds that we can apply for, and we're certainly looking at developing an expression of interest for the 292 for the transport hub as well. And then finally, you know, obviously without repeating ourselves, hot air balloons and slipway fees. We've got baseball, and we've also got obviously the Vibrant Cafe as well, which will all give us extra income. So overall, it's a way of giving you members a general overview, and I'll hopefully report quarterly to your good selves of what's going on, and that you can bring it all together. So you know, over the course of the next few months, you might see things come in for the expressions of interest, sorry, say about the 63,000 for the play equipment, but it just gives you an overview of what's going on, and it also gives you you know, things, suggestion. Well, why don't we think about doing that or something like that? So it's just as a bit of it's more information, but hopefully more of a collective approach to understand what we're doing and how we're getting on.
Thank you. If I start, really like this report because I think it shows that we're not only just about the tax money that we receive that we put to very good use, but that actually we're prepared to think outside of the box and look at what other funds are out there and that actually we do apply, and also how we look at, you know, some of the feedback that's given. So, you know, I think it's not the full feedback, I guess, but, you know, the Taunton Together grant, was there anything else that we could do in future to demonstrate actually how that does bring people together, or how do we adjust an event accordingly? I've got some questions on the actual section 106, and I don't know if you haven't got all the detail maybe in writing, but just I'm really intrigued that there's no end date on the coal orchard, because that's just, I always thought section 106 had an end date, but we must have, because it was built by the council, they didn't put one on.
Who knows? It seems to vary. We have obviously the parcel of land where we've just been successful. The 19,000 obviously had the November 25. I think there was another end date for another one, but that's a small sum. But no, there is no end date, as the same with land at Killam. So
even my other question, the land at Killam's had no end date, so that does allow us to be a bit more kind of thinking about how we use it. And then I'm not sure whether it sits with this committee or maybe it doesn't, rather than ops and assets, is the cafe at Belvedere Park, as to whether we'll look as to whether the lease actually covers the costs of everything that encompasses, such as, I think the water still on there. I know it's not going to amount to £7,500 for water, but, you know, are we making sure that actually what we do as a lease mechanism actually is truly an income? Does that make sense?
Come back on that first one if you like. Yeah, we are looking at the facilities to the utilities in the Belvedere Park, and making sure that the council, because there's some that feed off itself, so the council and the Rifle Club as well, so making sure that we're only paying for what we use and pay for what they need as well. I won't go into too much detail, but obviously that lease has a number of years to run. There is a rent review for that short lease, and obviously what has and when the lease is up for renewal, we can ensure and can negotiate the best deal possible for the council. Thank you.
Bob, do you have a question?
Yes, thank you, Chair. Always got questions. It's not so much a question as a statement. I was talking to a person in the last few weeks, and there's potential other grant funding available from an entity. I'm not sure if it's right to mention it at this meeting, but who would we go that through? If we find an opportunity for other grant funders, we go to Andrew with that? No,
let Will know. Will Rowe, our grant officer, let him know of any potential opportunities you spot, because you know, unfortunately there is quite a dearth of government grant at the moment, and what is out there is very oversubscribed. So yeah, if you do see opportunities, please let us know. Yes, I certainly have got one, but I will. That's not making that. Thank you. the more we know what's out there, the better opportunities we'll get.
Yeah, there's potential from GWR and with other things, there are funds of monies there. And if we integrate with certain things, integrated transport things, and it might be potential avenue to apply for. I'll go to Will with that. Thank you.
Thank you, Chair. Yeah, other members may know, and I'm not an expert in this area, but with the Prizewood Park play equipment, it says it needs to be spent by November. So are we confident that can be met, or do we have an alternative?
No,
Okay.
we're confident we can met. What you do with Section 106 is similar to what you do with the lotteries. You put an expression of interest in. If they're happy with the expression of interest, then they'll invite you to apply. So we had a reasonable confidence level that once they accepted the expression of interest, that the application was, almost just dotting the dotting the I's and crossing the T's. So and I will be the same with the lottery. So the only issue with Section 106's members is that we will have to go through and pay for it ourselves. That's when we've got all our invoices all paid, then we claim the money back from Somerset Council. It's a little bit.
Okay.
But once we know that we've got the award, that we can spend the money, but we'll know that we'll get that money. We'll recoup those funds accordingly.
Any other questions?
So if not, we'll go to recommendations. It's just a note, isn't it? So I think we're all really comfortable, and for it to come back on a quarterly basis. The only other thing, just sorry, Angela, while I think about it, is whether we can see the seal that's currently outstanding, or where does that report go, so that we can keep track of seal to make sure that we ensure that we can.
This will be part of the report.
Okay.
So at the moment, I think we've got a payment in April, which was just over 31,000, and I think we've got about just over 364,000 in the pot at the moment.
Is it possible to see what dates are coming up on any though? I previously knew of SWT where it got really close, or we actually had to hand back some seal money. So it would be good that in the report we see some. I don't know. We've got another one that we need to use by X.
No, I can do, because we're in a reasonably unique position, because obviously we've inherited I think it's the West Monkton and the Troll neighbourhood plans, which means we get the 25%, whereas the majority of the rest of our area is 15%. So there is a piece of work to do around, which I'm hoping to do with Somerset Council shortly, whereby we're actually splitting our spend down by 15 and 25%. So, but we know majority of our payments are 28, 29 and 30 at the moment. So we've got some time. So, but yeah.
Yeah, just on the earmark reserve report, would the earmark reserve for each year. So the SIL is shown by year. So if you look at that, well, you can see the older SIL that we've got, and we'll spend from that as we go along, and then use that in order, so that if we were coming up to 28 and there was still money left from the 23, 24, then we'd know that we've got to spend that money. Yes, and it's in the SIL policy.
I just don't want to hand back seal or Section 106 or not draw it
We'll
down.
do everything we can, Councillor, to ensure that doesn't happen.
I think most of it's been allocated already, even though it's not been spent.
So thank you for that report. It's noted. So we'll go on to agenda item. I haven't got the number in front of me actually, but the health and safety policy and handbook. 8. Agenda item 8. Perfect. We are whistling through this evening. Are you presenting that, Martin?
Yes, thank you, Chair. So this report has been prepared by Jack Baldwin and John Kramer, who's our new health and safety lead. Is to consider and approve an amendment which has been suggested by our WorkNest safety colleagues to the health and safety policy, and to consider and review the annual report which has been sent to us following their annual visit, which they do every year, and that was done in January 2025, so a number of months ago. And the report is there attached for you today this evening. John's off sick the last couple of days, which is unfortunate, but him and Jack are due to come back. I think it's on your forward plan for the next meeting to have a more in-depth review introduction to John. I don't know how many of you have actually met him since he started in post early in the spring, and to go through and let you know which of those in the report that weren't necessarily have been ticked off. As I understand it, a number of them have already been completed. But happy to take any questions on the specifics. There are some inaccurate information in the witness report as well, sort of saying that some of the stuff around the Somerset are responsible for, which we've had in house as well, just around sort of the Legionella and things like that for the like pavilions and things. We've had that in house for a number of nearly a year now, I believe. So yeah, so the minor amendment there is around the legal responsibilities towards volunteers and temporary workers, and as a council and our health and safety lead, since he started, has been doing a fantastic job making sure that we've got risk assessments covering a range of all of the activities that we do. For instance, with the Advisory Park volunteers that we have in place that now lock the park of an evening, there's a risk assessment that covers their activities. So we have all of that in place, and the health and safety lead role has been a very positive development in terms of protecting the council and reassuring you as this committee, as it's your responsibility to ensure that we're across health and safety across the organisation. But happy to take any questions, Chair. Thank you.
Thank you, Marcus. Maybe a curveball, but I'm wondering whether we need to move the annual report to the next meeting when John's here to then delve into the greater details, so that we don't vote on that tonight and talk about those recommendations, and we literally just do the policy now, because I think it would be good if there are inaccuracies for us to go through them in detail, so that on public record they're kind of done and dusted. Does that make sense? Would that be a fair thing to do? And then when it comes to the handbook, it literally is about those volunteers and temporary workers, which I'm comfortable with. I think the only question I've got is, if going back to the annual report, if that's done in January, is there any way we can bump it up so it comes to the spring meeting, or does it take them months to write the report?
No, I think the reason that it was delayed is because we had a new health and safety lead start, so we wanted them to be able to go over the report. That's why it's taking a little bit longer.
Fine. So if other members are happy, we'll take the annual report to the next meeting where we can have a proper, probably deep dive, and hopefully rag rate it and tick loads of stuff off that we've done it in a positive way. Well, do you have any questions?
Not so much a question, it's sort of a statement, really. Having read through the 60 pages of the document, like this with touched on this with Donna earlier. My former company, full-time employment, we had videos with validation tests hidden within the system going through. It's not mentioned in the report, but I think it would be good to add that it is covered, and all the staff go through this annually for further training and then validation of transfer of learning. And I think that would be good to combine that in with the policy of how it goes, rather than just sign the piece of paper and have that on file. I know that's good, but the policy very good, and I did read page terms. Thank you.
Cool.
Yeah, the amendments around volunteers for us or helping us. Do we know what that definition is? So I might be off track here, but if somebody agrees to do a litter pick in Victoria Park, are they volunteers of the council? Or, because I know this came up with, we have to sign something now with the payback team to make sure they're safe, and that's pending, that we've got to meet them and sign off that they're safe to do it. So I just wonder where we stood, if you can answer, with smaller groups that decide to do a litter pick. They're not classed as volunteers, I guess.
I think they would be. I think if they're coming to the council saying they'd like to use council equipment, and pick up, or is this just?
I think it's just members of the public that go around and do litter picking, whereas they're not doing it on behalf of the council, so they're under their own guise, aren't they? Whereas the volunteer bit was that we've got volunteers, say, looking.
Yeah, so the volunteers are in a written arrangement with Taunton Town Council for Advisory Park, and there's an SLA that governs that relationship. That sounds a bit less formal.
Just checking.
So I can go away and check on.
Any other questions? So on that basis, we're happy to sign off on the policy this evening, but we'll deal with the annual report. And hopefully it will be ticked off or amended at the next meeting. I'm happy to propose. Bob seconding. All those in favour? Perfect. So, agenda item number 9, our financial update.
Okay, thank you, Chair. The financial report provides an update for Q1 on the income and expenditure. It's attached to the balance sheet and the earmark reserves all at the end of June. Also shown are the budget variance and the payments made since this last committee, so from the 1st of May to the 30th of June, that 2-month period. There are no material variances in the budget exceeding 30,000, but there are budget pressures existing in areas such as vehicle hire and pavilion maintenance within the ops and assets area. That's mainly due to operational needs and compliance work on fire risk assessments. Also, as at the 30th of June, unbudgeted legal costs in respect of the authorised and unauthorised encampments in our parks, and that totaled at that stage £18,000. There's several budget variants being made. These relate to projects such as the transport hub, electricity for street traders, Waterleys Estate and Trafalgar House. They were all approved by full council. Additionally, there's been some variance in budget due to unestimated budget costs for waste disposal and vehicle related expenses.
So what I've thought about when we're doing this, Gail, thank you, to make our lives easier is that we go through each purpose in one go rather than jumping all over the shop, so to speak, so that if we look at the income and expenditure first, if anyone's got any questions, and that will probably pick up at the same time the budget bit, which is the detail in number 2. But does anyone have any questions on their income and expenditure? I've got some, but I'll come to those after everyone else. Ed?
Obviously talking about the encampments, yeah, that's obviously cost us some money, but we are, you know, we are putting a lot into trying to prevent it in the future. Just a statement I want to say.
Interestingly, that was one of my questions, is do we need to move money around, I guess, environment,
Yeah,
to cover these costs from just reserves, or we've just got the funds already? Do we need to create a separate line for basically bailiffs or legal fees related to unauthorised encampment?
there are they're attached to each park at the moment, so
Okay.
we show the income and expenditure relating to each park so that we know how much those parks are costing us to run. As it's unbudgeted income, when we get to the end of the year, if we have no surplus in our budget, we will have to draw on our general reserve to cover those.
And within those cost centres, we can clearly see that within parks, and this gets very operational, what each park is costing us broken down, so that we can really do, which is brilliant reporting that we've got here, that shows roughly we're spending, you know, £3,500 a time for each incursion. Okay. My question is, and I don't know whether we need a confidential briefing at another time, but is on the van equipment hire, just where we are in trying to move that forward in relation to that issue, because we are now twice over the budget for van hire for the year, and what mitigating factors are we putting in to deal with that?
Some of that.
Yeah.
We haven't come to a total agreement on the issue as yet. We have agreement though to go out and lease the vehicles, and I mean lease as in finance lease as opposed to rent, the vehicles which we are now putting a proposal together so that we can use the government framework for those vans. But I believe the delivery lead times are between 20 and 26.
So ultimately, we're going to see that budget probably end up at about 20,000 for the year. That will be in total for hire.
It'll be more than that. I
More than that.
signed off 5 purchase orders today, I think that totaled about 15,000 for the end of September. But we are leasing as opposed to purchasing the vehicles, and we do have a capital budget under cost centre 135 for new and replacement vans. So that 90,000, we will be able to via that to cover the hire and the vehicle leases.
And if I was to go on to then fire risk assessments and the parks, I guess as we move forward, and if we ever want to do any further taking on of assets, which we're doing, I guess, with building 1 and 2, is do we do our surveys? We do our surveys before that, don't we, to give a rough estimate of costs,
Yes.
so that we can build that in. And then with that, we're currently putting that against those parks because they came over at a different time. I guess, where do we put it in other buildings that are coming over as part of further devolution or asset transfer?
Each of those will have their own cost centre, so it'll go against those individual assets.
So we can see exactly the total sum that each of those buildings are costing us, and then go after any grants should they be available. Okay.
And on the fire risk assessments, incidentally, we didn't really budget for those last year. And I think that there's lots of things coming out with these devolved assets that weren't expected when we budgeted last year, because we don't have the history.
And I guess we learned from that, so that we need to do fire risk assessments across all of our buildings, or each different things that crop up. Any further questions on the Q1 income, those budget points that we've had? Any questions on the balance sheet and earmarked reserves? Appendix 2. And on to the next bit, budget environments made since last meeting. So that's point 4, where we're doing movement of different money around. So, we're all happy with how the budget's going here. And then we've got the payments section, haven't we, next? So that's payments for the last 2 months. So that's section 5. Appendix. Any questions in relation to any payments we're being made? What I find amazing is just how transparent we are with all the different payments that we make. So when people are interested, they could always look at our finance and governance minutes, and all 317 pages, and look at all the payments we're making. So any questions? Payments that we do? Are doing good. So this is just noting. So, what?
Yeah, just small question, Gail, and thank you for the detail and the work that you put in, you and your team. It's phenomenal and really detailed. But how do you feel the budget is going against forecasts on that, Gail?
Personally, I think it's going to be very tight this year. Be some overspends. Obviously, as I said, we don't have history, so when we budgeted last year, it was difficult to know some of the budgets that needed to be set. I think it will be tight, and certainly tighter than last year.
And that's mainly because of the devolved assets, mainly, and those other spends like the unauthorised encampment.
Yeah.
Any other questions? Or you're pondering?
Oh no, so this came up at work around budgets and stuff. So looking through, I can see pots that seem to be unspent. So I thought I just saw one. I might not have on solar panels on our. So will that, even though we might put them on this year, can we switch pots? So this is what we're talking about at work. We can switch around. I know that's not. You can't do that for everything. If it's tight, it's tight. That's what I mean. I'm just wondering whether you can say, okay, we've overspent here, but we can use this here to make it budget balance.
Yes, we can definitely do that. I mean, we've got stuff that's mandatory spend, so a lot of the compliance work we will need to make sure that we're covering our ongoing operational spend. But there is discretionary spend, such as putting solar panels on the roofs of the pavilions and on Trafalgar House, which we could delay. areas of need and then move that money to something where we.
Sorry, Jay, just one more question from me going through on, I don't know what page it's on, but infrastructure improvements and play equipment replacement. I know there's a lot of, from the public requesting upgrades to parks and things. I see there's a current, budget, 150,000, nothing's been spent yet. Is there plans in place from community in place to spend that, you know, soon or?
The tender, isn't it?
It's on the tender for the play park. So we've got 200 and something thousand in an earmark reserve, and that together with the 150 of budget this year will make our stake in the 1.2 million pound refurbishment of the play parks. And then obviously next year we'll probably want to budget a similar amount, and then hopefully we with some luck and lots of hard work from we'll be able to get some money from the lottery to cover the other half of that 1.2 million refund.
Yeah. So these refurbs will start soon, will they? Then
The tenders has to go out for 6 weeks. It went out last week, but we're closing on the middle of September because it's holiday season, and then once we've appointed a contractor, then we will start to do work with them and work on what the timetable will be for each of the parks.
that's really good. Thank you for that, because it is I get more questions on that than a lot. It's very visible what we would be doing in and around the town on the park side. So thank you.
Any other questions? We move on to the next item on the agenda, which is over to Marcus for a review of freedom of information policy.
So yes, this is a review of the freedom of information policy. It's just a number of suggested amendments there for you to consider. It's not a full scope review, but a few practical amendments to ensure the process runs smoothly. For example, removing the Mayor of Taunton from the internal review process, which I think was appropriate. We are seeing more and more freedom of information requests come through, which is to be expected, I guess, as we mature as a local authority. And we are planning on putting all of the ones that we have and receive on the transparency page of our website, which should help as well with repeat requests and things like that. But happy to take any questions.
Thank you, Marcus. My question is, does it automatically show on the website, like called, where everyone can access? What do you know? Is it what? Yeah. Was it because
I think if you reply to if it comes through via what do they know into info, and then we reply via that email, it will automatically get picked up into the, I think that's from Taunton. We haven't checked to see whether there is like a Taunton Town Council section on what do they know. Looking at the.
My only other question, I guess, is I know that we've revised this. Isn't there like just standard protocol for parish councils in relation to freedom of information requests? Because there should just be a copy and paste for everyone, shouldn't it?
There is, but you have to adapt it. So some of the things that we will do is, you know, we don't have to put stuff onto our website, but for transparency purposes, it would be good to put it on there.
Yeah, and I totally agree with putting on the website, because then ultimately it means that hopefully you get less. I guess my only issue is, interestingly, I know subject access requests are different than freedom of information requests. Do you retract individual information? So if there were, let's say you don't show people's names or anything. So if someone was to do a freedom of information and it covered things like staff members or, you know, like staff members in it.
We would have to go through and redact all the names.
You can get some brilliant software for doing redaction, just so you know. Okay,
I think we've got it on the Adobe Professional options.
just because I know what that's like for doing subject access requests myself, processing them. Any other questions? Paul?
Yeah, just me again. I think, like, does it say that, should I be able to see the changes or the amendments somewhere?
I think there is a track.
That's me then. If I'm supposed to implement something, I can track changes. Do you do that on a PDF, do you?
I think there's two documents attached.
Yeah.
And then there's one that's should be showing track changes, but hopefully
That's probably me, Marcus, because
I can share this with so
use it.
email for that. It might be decisions.
I just made a note that I couldn't see what the changes were apart from the mail one that you made.
I don't think it shows, I've got a PDF version of the agenda. It doesn't ever show then any of the trackings in there.
It doesn't highlight.
No, it doesn't highlight the changes, but I was comfortable with the policy anyhow,
Yeah.
so. Any other questions or comments? I'm comfortable proposing it. And you're seconding, all those in favour? Move on to the next item on the agenda, credit management, and over to Gail.
So this is the annual review of the credit management policy approval. There's some minor amendments which were tracked on the Word copy, but I don't think you'll be able to see them on the PDF. But the main addition is for the annual subscription to Credit Safe, which is a credit reference checking agency. Primarily, we use Credit Safe to enable us to assess the financial strength of our key suppliers, but we are able to use it if we had any businesses owing us significant amounts of money or contract with them.
We used to listen to. I've just got a question. So the credit safe, really comfortable with it going in. Would we also do it on our tenants?
If they were new tenants, we could use that, yes.
Okay, just so that we can check that they have got the ability to, perfect. Any other questions? No? Okay, so we'll go to the recommendation, which is on page 266. Which is to approve the updated credit management policy. I'm happy to propose. Okay, Paul, you can have the next one, Rob. All those in favour? Brilliant. So we've done credit management. We're now on to our reserves policy.
Fortunately, again, you can't see the track changes because we've got a PDF document. The reserves policy has now been renamed. Sorry, this was a renamed policy. Originally, it was called the General Reserves Policy, which was actually incorrect because the General Reserve is one of our key reserves. So this covers more than just the General Reserve. It also covers the earmarked reserves and our restricted reserves. And in the policy, we've also broken down the difference between the earmarked reserves and the restricted reserves. We have clarity on the three types of reserves that we are able to keep and use. Key revisions to the policy include alignment to the 2025 Practitioners Guide and the Smaller Authorities Proper Practices Panel, as well as revised general reserve thresholds. The general guidelines are to hold between 3 and 12 months of predicted expenditure on our general reserve, but as you get to be a larger authority, it would be closer to the 3 months. So it's been slightly amended just to say that our general reserve threshold would be set at equal to or greater than 3 months.
Yeah, I'm still getting used to it, so even though I'm really comfortable with this, my view on it. I think it's really good to demonstrate what we mean by different types of reserves, and also that educates people, because sometimes people want to use certain reserves and actually you can't, and they're restricted. And so I think this is actually very, I guess, layman's terms almost, just to understand what actually the finances are and how we work. I'm also comfortable going greater than 3 months. I never like to have loads and loads of reserves because you have to obviously have enough to keep you going, but obviously we'll want to invest, and we are doing lots of investment, so it's that balance. And we review the reserves on this committee at every meeting, do we, when we look all roughly quarterly on budget? Okay, budget setting. So I'm comfortable.
No, well, it's more of a statement, really. This goes along. I've been in professional finance for all my working career, and it goes along the same lines as personal finance, that you should have 3 months reserves for unexpected measures that might come along. So yes, I'm More than happy with that, thanks.
Any other questions? So if we go to the recommendations, which is to approve it. So on page 275, I'm happy to propose. Rob, you're happy to second?
Yes.
All those in favour? Brilliant. So we now move on to the annual investment strategy.
So alongside the reserves policy, the annual investment strategy sits to support that. And I brought forward the review of this because it was last done in September, just so that the reserves policy and the annual investment strategy come together. Basically, there are no changes except to update minor role changes to organisation.
So we'll see this every year at the same time.
Yeah.
So these two will always come together so that we can just make sure that they work in tandem.
Yeah.
Okay. Any other questions? Well, we are whistling through this. It's only 7 o'clock. So on page 282 of my papers, or everyone's papers, it's to approve the annual investment strategy. I'm happy to propose. Bob seconding. All those in favour? Brilliant. So move on to the next item on the agenda, which is the procurement policy.
This is a new policy and it brings together various other documents to ensure we have one clear overarching policy for procurement. Policy establishes a structured framework to ensure effective, legal and sustainable procurement of goods and services. It aims to secure best value, support local businesses and align with our environmental goals, particularly achieving carbon neutrality by 2030. Also a part in there where potential suppliers can apply to become part of the supplier.
So open to any questions, Paul?
Yeah, I don't really expect it to be changed now. I just wondered what the officers thought about the 500 level. So under 500, you can delegate the authority, but anything over £500, the officers have to go and get 3 different quotes. So like, I know it's public money, but it seems like as soon as you go over 500, you're going to have to do that extra work to find 3 quotes. And I just wondered if that 500 level members thought was quite low in this day and age, but I'm just pointing it out because I thought, officer time is valuable. So if it's £501, you have to approach 3 companies, get 3 different quotes. And given our budget, it seems, I'm only proposing up to I'm not saying, but it's just a thought really, Gail.
Can I just respond to that then? Those limits are laid down in our financial regulations, so they've only been pulled into this policy from the financial regulations, which were agreed by the council.
Okay.
We could look for next year to, when we look at the financial regulations, to increase that amount, because it is a value.
Yeah, it'd be interesting to note, like, if we come to like next February, March time to analyse, actually, if we put it up to 1,000, what would the risk be of doing so?
Yeah.
I think there's also, isn't there, on the transparency page, that any payment over £500 has to be listed on website. So 500 is one of those things that's set in stone on quite a few different things.
It is, but we can actually pull that data out and show you what we've got above 5 and what we've got below 5 and what really increase the threshold.
It's really just to save.
Yeah, no,
Save you guys.
I guess if we're going to do that analysis, and I'm sorry to add more work to people, I'm wondering if it would be interesting to note of all the procurement that we've done so far this year, how much it was with local firms, if we've got that.
Now you're adding work.
I am adding work.
I'm sure we'll keep that separate.
Okay. I'm just wondering whether we do look at our spend within the local economy, so what we do, because I know that we do try, and we've done, I've all things toilets, clearly toilets on my brain, but I thought we did use some local-ish firm when we were.
It's always on the front of every officer's mind of when they go out to get quotes, to go to the local firms first. part of the purchase order processes, you've got to say if you've got three quotes and
And
who they've come from.
It's just interesting to know what, I guess, what we do spend locally out of our budget, but if it's too, I don't want it to be lots of work for someone. Any other questions on this? Okay. I'm happy to propose it. Ed, all those in favour? Brilliant. So on to employee use of purchasing card policy.
okay, this is also a new policy. As we've grown in size, we now have with purchasing cards. So it's become important that we have a policy that guides how they ensures that they have responsible spending and that they comply with our financial controls. So this policy just lays out how each of the individuals who have those cards use it, and what their spending limits are, and how they need to complete the expenses so that we report.
My question on this comes from, I want to say I had this conversation previously in relation to like a direct labour organisation, and I think would some of our kind of open spaces team have a purchasing card? And I previously remember discussing around the kind of just-in-time approach, which meant that people were going to Screwfix compared to doing bulk ordering of stuff that we regularly needed. And just how do we get a balance of kind of, do we monitor what people are purchasing on in order to become more efficient, as much as then that just-in-time Amazon bulk discount for what would be better. I know I want us to use local, but you know, that kind of cost saving that way.
I think now that the depot is in place, their intention is anything that they use regularly, they will keep a stock on. If there's anything that, and we've set up trade cards as well, so that if there's anything, then we can monitor the spend through those. But if there's anything that they need there and then they need the ability to go. And yes, they are considering having a stock.
Okay.
They have to control.
Yes, we don't get stock control, but it was just that whole, like, just making sure that every so often we, I guess, audit what they, if we've got 18 people now, and that would be a significant spend going through. How do we keep kind of track to make sure that it is kind of all just fitting nicely? Any other questions? Ed?
I read on the news yesterday about companies being hacked and then some of them potentially paying. Do we have it within our policy to say that you can't use our cards to pay criminals or hackers just to release files, or to when there's a ransom demand, basically?
We don't have that in our policy, but the limits are well, generally are between £500 and £2.5. They're not huge limits for individuals.
I think it might still be worth having a a specific policy in there to say about not using it to pay for ransoms.
Yeah, and then we just, I guess it will have to align with our cyber security policy,
Which is,
and just make sure it all filters across.
Yeah.
Cool.
Yeah, sorry again. There was a line in there in the thing where it says any suspicious or unknown charges must be reported immediately. And then it says typically within 5 to 7 business days. If I had a work credit card and I looked at my statement and thought, what's that? I didn't feel right to leave it 7 days before I would tell you, Gail. Although we are talking about small amounts of money, I don't know if I've got that right or what the context is, if that makes sense.
No, I think that's normally how quickly that it would be picked up. We download the statements every week. All the card holders will get a notification that the statements have been downloaded. They then can reconcile the last week's spending against those statements. And they have one final reconciliation at the month end. So if they identified anything that was suspicious at that stage, they would flag it.
And do we like the cards to be kept? What? Yeah, so they go on people's phones. Oh no, they literally are
Physical cards.
Physical cards. I was just wondering whether actually, as we move more modern and stuff, whether that was something that can or can't.
I suppose we haven't really thought about that, but
No, people
could
putting
do.
them in their Apple wallets, I'm not sure I'd want that. We might end up with personal expenditure on.
But yeah, it has its pros and cons,
Yeah.
but it was just where, as more things are moving, just to be, I don't carry a wallet or a card. But yeah, cool.
Sorry. So I'm just thinking back to the last one, and it's probably procurement law, is it? So you said it was between 500 and 2,000 on these cards. So someone can go out and pick a particular place where they use that card. But if we're procuring something and it's over £500, we have to find 3 different places to. Do you see the point I'm making? If I've got a card and I go, I don't know what you buy on them, but if there's 3 places in town to buy them and it costs £600, then haven't I got to go through procurement?
Yes.
So they can never spend more than £500.
No, they can spend it, but they have to go through the process of getting 3 quotes.
Yeah.
So you would, if I wanted to go out and buy a table, for example,
Yeah.
then I would go out and find out the best 3 places to buy that table or that desk, and then I would buy. Because
Do they have to prove that by taking photos of like the IKEA label versus the, I don't,
they can provide online. I mean,
Okay.
it's very clear in our
Yeah.
financial regs that they can provide online
Quotation.
quotations to support.
Okay.
it's then so that means they don't have to have an invoice raised for them by not to pay.
And we would only encourage people to use them when they can't raise an invoice. If somebody wants the money up front, or we've recently bought something where they wanted a deposit, but they would allow us to pay the rest by invoice. So there's things like that come through. And you also have to recognise that the limits that are allocated to those cards go by grade of
Yeah.
officer.
Any more questions? Anyone want to propose this policy rather than myself? Rob. And Paul seconding. All those in favour with that slight amendment just on cyber security? You in favour?
Yeah, I am in favour. Sorry.
Okay.
While you exclude the members of the public. Have I got time, Chair?
We've got one more and then we've got exclusion.
Oh, right, sorry. Oh, yes, we have. Sorry. Drinking water.
That's a re-evaluation of premises for insurance purposes.
Okay, this report seeks to engage a valuer, professional valuer, to conduct reinstatement valuations of our premises. They're primarily the pavilions that have passed across to us from other authorities, because we don't have up-to-date reinstatement values for insurance purposes. So we could find ourselves with being underinsured, or we could be significantly overinsured. We just don't have an idea really when that was done, how that sits. So standard practice is to obtain revaluations every 3 years to mitigate the underinsurance risk. I recommend that on this occasion we obtain values where we have site visits conducted, so the valuers can go around, collect the information and report fully on the premises and provide us with valuations. But moving forward in the 3-year cycle, we could use desktop valuations to cover those valuations. And so it's recommended that the committee delegates authority to me as RFO to engage a surveyor to undertake the insurance evaluations as highlighted, using up to 5,000 of the other professional fees budget, and ensure that we've completed those valuations before the renewal date of the 1st of April next year.
I'm comfortable with the premise of the report. My questions are buildings that we've taken on or we're due to take on, like 1 and 2, we'll build them into this programme so that we'll.
Building 2, we've already had a reinstatement value. Building 1, we haven't. Obviously, Trafalgar House we did as part of the purchase.
And if we have a reinstatement value based on what we're going to do with it when it's done up or its current condition now,
Its current
so
condition.
we would need another one post renovations. And I guess that's the same for, and it's not, but I guess it links to my second question. For those that we lease, say Cannon Street toilets, it's all covered by Somerset Council insurance, even though we've done up, made the building better inside.
and spent a lot of money doing it up.
Yeah.
Does that then mean they need to seek their own valuation as to what their insurance covers them to, because to reinstate it would cost more than what it was before?
It's a reinstatement of the building, but we insure, for example, Cannon Street, we insure the contents.
And that includes like all our beautiful tiles and toilets.
Yes.
Oh, okay, so it's like a content building. Contents. Yeah, insurance,
Yeah, yeah.
basically, okay,
So, and Somerset Council own them, so that's for them to.
to deal with the actual building.
Yeah, and we don't have to do buildings.
Yes, again, thank you, Gail. Really good paper. Would it be possible, would the asset value be the same as the insurance rebuild cost? And if it was different, should we have a asset value for our total valuations of what we own?
Yes, these assets were passed from another authority, and the rules are for those is that they come across at £1. So our asset value in our asset register for the premises is £1.
Even if we would sell them, they'd be worth more if we ever wanted to.
Yeah,
That's the accounting rules that apply to town.
Yeah,
and
okay.
parish
it's something like the Catholic Goodlands Gardens. If we did need money, but that might be a resellable asset perhaps as an ongoing concern. But it's just a thought. If we're doing a insurance valuation, that a proper resale value might be an idea. Point 2 is we've got 2 there, Hamilton Park and Garmington Park, exactly the same figure, which with
They were built at the same time, weren't they?
As I said, these have come across, these reinstatement values came across from the other authorities. So I don't know when they were done or how accurate they are.
The similar buildings that were done at the same time by Sports England, weren't they? Or the Football Foundation or something. They're not that much different looking with what they are.
That was a really good idea to have that done in the face-to-face or the satchel site visit. It's got to be the way to go, hasn't it, really? So that's all from me, thank you.
So recommendations on page 316. I'm happy to propose these. Seconder. All those in favour? Carried. We need to go into, and I need to read something out. Is that right? I got that. It's on the agenda. Is it on the agenda? Oh, there you go. Got it. Sorry, it's printed across 2 pages on here randomly. Yeah. Got it on 2. So, agenda item number 17 is a motion to exclude the press in public in relation to item 18. So, during discussions of the following items, agenda item 18, it may be necessary to pass the following resolution to exclude the press and public, having reflected on the presumption in favour of openness. This decision may be required because consideration of this matter in public may disclose information falling within one of the descriptions of exempt information in Schedule 12A to the Local Government Act 1972. The committee will need to decide whether in all the circumstances of the case, the public interest in maintaining the exemption outweighs the public interest in disclosing the information. So the recommendation is that under section 100A4 of the Local Government Act 1972, the public be excluded from the items of business, agenda item 18, on the grounds that it involves the likely disclosure of exempt information as defined in paragraph 3, respectively in part 1 of Schedule 12A of the Act, namely information relating to the financial or business affairs of any particular person, including the authority holding that information. I'm going to propose that. Need a seconder? Rob seconding. All those in favour?